It's time for Herd Mentality, the weekly episode where you control the discussion. Today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Tuesday to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day. And as a reminder to you, we are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Well, we've got a lot of herd mentality items to dig into here on this Tuesday. Let's get started. First one comes from Chris. Chris says, I've been pretty disappointed with Gabriel Davis this season. Quick observation that hopefully you can clarify. Do Gabe's hands always seem to be in the wrong position before he catches the ball? Even when he catches it, I feel like he makes it harder than he has to, and when he drops them, it looks like he could have avoided it if he positioned his hands correctly. Chris, yes. And this is something that drives me crazy about Gabe Davis. The way that he addresses the football is not a coached technique. His hands tend to be wide, and he has like a sideways clap when he catches the ball. And that's not how you teach somebody to catch a football. Obviously, when I scout players, I evaluate their catching technique, and Gabe Davis doesn't do something that is coached. It's probably just what he's always done, and to his credit, look where he is. But at the same time, you just watch him catch a football and you realize that his hands are too far apart and he comes at the ball with this sideways clap that I think leads to some inconsistency where, you want to kind of have that firm diamond, extend your hands away from your frame and securely pluck it. And then if it's a lower throw, you want to have your palms up. And he just doesn't do that. It's this sideways clap, and it looks ugly, and it's not a coachable technique. But to Gabe's credit, he's had a lot of football success in his life. He's going to make a lot of money playing football. But it's definitely something that irks me when you see him drop a pass, because that's when you go back and say, man, if he just knew how to fundamentally catch a football, maybe that wouldn't have happened. But I'm sure he's just doing what's comfortable for him. Rich says, am I wrong to be terribly down on McKenzie? Not only does he drop too many passes, I really hate how he does not fight for the ball at all. Why not use Khalil Shakir more? To reference something that my buddy Bruce Nolan references all the time, expectations minus reality equals disappointment. So if you are terribly down on Isaiah McKenzie, that probably has a lot to do with what your expectations for him were this season. Because I think Isaiah McKenzie's been exactly the player I anticipated him being. Some flashy production, some inconsistency, just like he's always been. One of the things that I talked about a lot in the offseason was we needed to be realistic with our expectations for Isaiah McKenzie, not only because the Bills gave him a very, very, very modest contract that doesn't suggest he's going to be this huge volume piece of the offense, but also because it's pretty rare for a guy in their, like his fifth season to all of a sudden become a productive volume receiver in the NFL. And then just understanding his overall skill set and what that means for production. So I think if you had that perspective on McKenzie, then you're like, yeah, this is exactly who McKenzie is. If you thought McKenzie was going to come in and be this 110 target player like Cole Beasley was and do everything that Cole Beasley did over the previous seasons, well, then I think you had a misevaluation on what to expect and therefore your disappointment. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Why not use Shakir more? Well, I think the big thing to bring up there is he's a fifth-round rookie. And Isaiah McKenzie is the longest tenured wide receiver with Josh Allen. Those guys have the most years together of any receiver that Josh Allen has. And so when it comes down to trust, which we know is a big deal for this Bills organization, and we're learning is a big deal for Josh Allen, he's going to want the players that he's more familiar with on the field more, and he's going to want to throw them the football with more consistency. And so I think Shakir will eventually become a top 4 receiver for this team, and his market share will only go up. But I also understand exactly why right now that's not the case. David says, I'm a bit surprised that Cole Beasley has only had a couple of targets since his return. Do you think the Bills are bringing him back slowly, giving him more practice time, or keeping him off the opponent's radar until he is really needed? I feel like the Bills' priority with Cole Beasley right now is ramping him up. And I don't mean that through the sense of getting on the same page with Josh Allen. I think we are all excited about Cole Beasley because he could step in and use that time on task in the past to hit the ground running with Josh Allen. I think the reality here is that Cole Beasley, since he was last with the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs last year, has not really played a lot of football, right? He didn't sign with a team until after the regular season started, so he had no normal OTAs, offseason, preseason, training camp. None of that happened for him. And he's on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for like a couple of weeks. He retires, and then he's been playing pickup basketball. Well, folks, pickup basketball is a great exercise workout, but you're not going to be ready to play NFL football after doing that for a few months and not playing NFL football since January, right? So I think it's all about ramping up and not putting Cole in a position where he's going to have issues with soft tissue injuries because he hasn't got himself to the point where he's ready to really command a ton of volume and workload. So I think all of this right now is getting him in the routine of going through a game week, all the way from a practice to the pregame stuff to getting a few reps during the game, catching a pass, and that being what he can offer the team. I expect that to only go up each week, with the emphasis being what Cole Beasley can add in the postseason. You have a wrinkle that you can sprinkle in at this point in the season that's going to create a lot of conflict for these teams. And so I think that his utilization will only increase, but I also understand why it hasn't been a ton of volume to this point. Cole has to get himself ready to command 5, 6, 7, 8 targets a game. And I think that will come, but I do think we need to be mindful of what it takes to get a player ready to go and really be a meaningful piece of a passing offense. Steve says, we've seen a number of games where the Bills defense allows an opening drive score by the opponent, followed by later series where the Bills tighten the screws, as you so correctly put it. Of course, this tightening is based on adjustments, but often it seems as though the Bills are allowing opposing offenses to run their game plan with some success in early series, lulling the opponent into believing the incoming game plan is sound, even to the point where the opposing offensive coordinator will stubbornly stick to what worked early, playing right into the Bills' trap. Is this a level of gamesmanship occurring, or are offenses too good to fall for this? I appreciate the layers to the question here, Stephen, but I really just think it comes down to a feeling out process that exists in every single football game, where you're wanting to see what they think of you, right? You want to kind of get some clues into what the game plan is going to be and how they want to attack you. And then from there, you make adjustments. And this Bills defensive coaching staff has a ton of coaching talent on it. I mean, Sean McDermott speaks for himself, Leslie Frazier, but then Eric Washington, who's been a defensive coordinator in the NFL and has a lot of experience. John Butler, man, that guy's awesome as the Bills passing game coordinator on defense. He's been a phenomenal secondary coach for the team. I think it's only a matter of time before that guy is somebody's defensive coordinator. And then Bobby Babich as well, who I think is very much on that trajectory to be a defensive coordinator one day. So I think you just have a ton of coaching acumen. And once they get together and can kind of see, all right, what does this team want to do to attack us? They can make those quick adjustments and really, to go back to the phrase, tighten the screws, bow up, whatever you want to call it, and really take that team out of what they thought was going to be successful. And I think that they do a really good job of anticipating how teams are going to evolve their game plan once they get it and go from there. I think the Bills just have Really, really, really good coaching on the defensive side of the football, and that's what allows them to tighten those screws and make you forget about a lot of early game woes. I feel like I watch this every week where that team, the opposing team comes out, they move the ball, and you see the tweets, it's like ridiculous. If the Bills play like this, they can't beat the Bengals. Have we been watching this? I just you got to let these things play out. They keep score the whole time, and we can't continue to overreact to these early couple of drives, defensive struggles. There's 10, 11, 12 drives every single game. The first two don't decide the game, all right? They don't. So we got to do a better job as fans to let these things play out and not go into the dumps because the Bills defense didn't have a good opening drive. Well, guess what, folks? There's 11 more drives coming, and they all count the same. I'm really geeked out by our new partner and sponsor of today's podcast, the mobile game Ultimate Football GM. Have you ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. You manage every strategic aspect of your team. You play through the season, and you can lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, making draft picks, and navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft with all the ups and downs of a season. All of this comes in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. We actually have a league for the Locked On hosts, and we are having a ton of fun. I've heard from some listeners that are sending me DMs and saying, hey, thanks for telling me about this game. I'm having a blast with it. You can too. And in fact, Locked On Bills listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. That's Locked On. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. The next one today comes from Paul. Paul says, Justin Fields was held to his lowest rushing yards of the season. How much credit does the Bills how much credit does the Bills D deserve, and do they use a similar system to defend Lamar Jackson? Paul, the Bills defense gets all the credit here. I think from a game plan perspective, they had the right understanding of how to play Justin Fields, which is a contained, disciplined rush. And I think it's one thing to come up with that type of a game plan, which involves, good preparation with your rush plan, good understanding with your second level and when to spy, when to close, when to leverage routes, what routes to leverage. And then of course your coverage defenders, guys that are going to be covering, understanding that spacing and eyes in the backfield and leveraging the route combinations that you're seeing in such a way that's going to allow the front to be successful, right? You hear the Bills coaches talk all the time about marrying the front end with the back end, right? And the rush complements the coverage, just like the coverage complements the rush. This was a beautiful example of what they're talking about in a football game. And it's one thing to come up with the right strategy, but it's another thing to execute. And so give all the credit to the Bills defensive line for doing a phenomenal job of contain rushing Justin Fields. When you're a defensive lineman, you want to pin your ears back, you want to fly up the field, and you want to get to the quarterback with speed, right? You want to get there. It's a race to the quarterback. Well, you have to play it differently when you go up against a Justin Fields or Lamar Jackson. You have to be willing to get off the ball, but you have to play with a level of control that's different. You have to play the game differently. Break down and put yourself in a position to not create escape avenues for that mobile quarterback, in this case, Justin Fields. And so the Bills had the right plan, they had the right execution, and it's tough to do. It really is tough to do. Again, I don't come from a huge background of playing high level football, but I've played enough football, and I've certainly studied and seen enough football to know that you really have to be extremely disciplined to not sell out and get outside of the design of the scheme when you have a chance to go make a run at the quarterback. And the Bills, I thought, played with incredible awareness defensively to have success, really bottling up Justin Fields, who had 1,000 yards entering the game. He was in striking distance of breaking the all-time record for rushing yards in a season by a quarterback, and the Bills held him to 11 yards on 7 carries. The next one today comes from Nigel, who says, it seems like James Cook is really starting to hit his stride as a runner. What do you think is the cause of this? Is it play calling, offensive line play, or just simply needing time to acclimate from the college game to the NFL game? Well, Nigel, I think a lot of it is what you said there at the end in terms of acclimating and settling in and settling into the pace of the game, which is a big jump, even from the SEC for a guy that has a brother that's a very, very good top-tier NFL running back. You know, he didn't get a ton of volume at Georgia, right? So he's kind of under-repped for a player coming into the NFL. And so I think settling in, getting the timing down within the scheme has been really, really good for him. And I still think the game's a little fast for him. I do. I think he's being productive and I like what he's offering, but I still think that there's more for James Cook to settle into, because there still are times where I feel like those feet are ahead of him, and he's thinking a lot. And I think he'll continue to settle in and have more success and develop that feel and understanding of the pace of the game. So I think that's all happening. But maybe the biggest thing is just kind of overcoming some of those early season struggles where him having success has led to more opportunities. And obviously Zach Moss no longer being part of the picture here. And you heard about Sean McDermott having a conversation with James Cook after they traded for Nyheim Hines and saying, hey, look, this really doesn't change anything for you. And I think that buy-in all around has really contributed to James Cook being an X factor for this offense and, you know, having more and more flashy moments of production. And we get excited about what he can settle into and can continue developing into for this team. The next one today comes from Debbie, who says, we've seen some good things out of AJ Epenesa as of recent, but has much of Epenesa's recent production been real development or more along the lines of coverage, sacks, and being in the right place at the right time? Well, I give AJ a lot of credit for his production. I mean, he's got 6.5 sacks right now. I mean, when's the last time Jerry Hughes had 6.5 sacks in a season for the Bills, right? And I know that brings up a whole big conversation about pressure and sacks and all that type of stuff, which I'm not super interested in getting into right now. But 6.5 sacks is a good number for AJ Epenesa. And what I always like to be mindful of when considering the career arc of AJ Epenesa as a player that we all watched at Iowa, and some people thought he can be a first-round pick, and then he has a really bad combine. He falls to the second round. The Bills pick him. And then, you know, for 2 seasons, he's been sort of flashy, but mostly inconsistent. But we have to remember, like, he dropped 30 pounds his first year, which was 2020. It was a crazy COVID year. And, you know, like, that big of a body transformation changes the way you play the game. The things that made you successful as a long-armed, heavy-handed, compression-style power rusher was now different at 250 pounds compared to 280 pounds, or 285 down to 255. That's huge. And so then you put the weight back on, and it's year 2 of your career, and you're settling back into yourself stylistically. And I thought he kind of worked through some of those kinks and is playing his best football in year 3, certainly making the most plays of his career. Now, I don't know that AJ Epenesa is inspiring me to the level of saying, yeah, this is a starting caliber defensive end in the NFL, but he is inspiring me to believe that he's a worthy 35 to 45% of the snaps player in a good defensive line rotation. I don't think he's ever the guy you want out there 60% of the time, but 30, 40% gives you that ability to really challenge the width of the pocket with power. I like what AJ settling into, and I'll be excited to see how he evolves next season. And then the Bills will have to make a decision on his contract after next year. So I like his trajectory, and I like to think it has a lot to do with him settling into his body and being comfortable at his weight and developing how he's going to win from there. And I think that's starting to happen more and more. Tom says, we finally had a game where the defense tackled and limited explosive plays, especially on third down. I know the Bears aren't exactly a high-octane offense, but I think this is a step in the right direction for the Bills. Tackling in the cold is difficult enough to do, let alone on a frigid day like that. After having such a solid showing containing one of the most dynamic runners in the league, I know it's only one game, but they were exceptional at the things they've been awful at lately. I can't help but feel like the defense is putting it all together at the right time. Yeah, Tom, I think you have a great point here, and I want to focus in on the missed tackles because obviously I've focused on missed tackles for the last several years, and especially this season because they've just been ridiculous. The Bills tackled really well against the Bears. They were credited with 4 missed tackles, which is outstanding. That's where you want to be. That's not a normal number for the Bills. The Bills are usually 10, 15 missed tackles every game. They only had 4 against the Bears, and 3 of them were Matt Milano, 1 of them from Ed Oliver. That's it. That's it for the game. And so you love that. Now, the issue is that you continue to have missed tackle issues from Matt Milano, and I know we all love Matt Milano. I do too. You guys hear me rave about his skill set and his value and everything he brings to the defense. But this dude misses way too many tackles. I mean, he's up to 17% as a missed rate. He misses 17% of his tackle attempts. He's got to cut that in half. That's an unacceptable number. So for all the good that Matt Milano does, he's got to tackle with more consistency. 3 from Milano, 1 from Ed Oliver, only 4 for the game. That's a great job for a Bills defense that has had a ton of issues with tackling consistency. And yeah, I thought their 3rd and long defense was much better in this game. No question about it. Even though the officiating got in the way a few times, but for the most part, I thought those 2 issues, 3rd and longs and missed tackles, were much better against Chicago, and it needs to continue in that direction the rest of the way. I hope you've been getting in on the action over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is my favorite daily fantasy resource. How does it work? You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available, and Prize Picks has all the sports. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. So if you deposit 100, Prize Picks will give you 100. If you deposit 50, Prize Picks will give you 50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. The next one today comes from Mike. Mike says, I'm curious if your top quarterback comp from preseason has changed after 15 games. From my perspective, the Allen Burrow comparison is pretty easy, but both are great. Both are relentless, determined leaders with off-the-hook intangibles. Burrow is deadly accurate, more so than Josh Allen. Fewer mistakes, but also fewer impossible plays. Josh has superior physical talents. Burrow has the better supporting cast. They're 2 of the top 3 to 4 right now, and while I'd obviously take either and be over the moon happy, I like our guy. Has your opinion of either of them or even any specific attributes changed since your preseason comp of Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Justin Herbert? I appreciate this question, and I think at some point in the offseason, I will put these quarterbacks through that same lens and talk about them again. I think when you talk about the top tier of quarterbacks in the AFC, it's Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrow. And then it's probably Justin Herbert, and then you work your way down from there. I think all 3 teams, when you talk about that top tier, Bills, Chiefs, and Bengals, they love their guy. They love their guy, and they think their guy's the best. Now, I always like to add in this layer of I don't love debating elite tier football players or really for any sport. I think a lot of time that just leads to bad conversation and unnecessarily diminishing players that are really, really good, especially in basketball. I mean, the LeBron, Kobe, Michael, Jordan debates are just absolutely ridiculous. I have zero interest in any of that. And I think in a lot of ways you can find yourself in some of those traps when it comes to football. I'll say this, if there's anything that I've taken away from this season is that I find myself leaning significantly into Patrick Mahomes as just being the clear-cut QB1 in the NFL. I mean, his production is absolutely unreal. He's going to finish with over 5,000 passing yards, over 40 touchdowns, and with who at wide receiver? I know he obviously has Travis Kelce at tight end, who's a monster, but at receiver, it's Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Mecole Hardman, who is his longest tenured wide receiver. He's missed 7 games this year. Justin Watson, journeyman. Sky Moore has not really done anything as a recent draft pick this past year. Kadarius Toney, he's been on the team. He's played in 5 games and caught 8 passes. I mean, what does this guy have at receiver? He's got a bottom tier wide receiver core, in my opinion. Probably, I wouldn't say bottom tier. That's probably unfair, but it's not top 10 or top 15. That's for sure. And he's out there going to probably be the NFL MVP and deserves it. 5,000 passing yards and 40 plus touchdowns with Travis Kelce and who? Not really a consistent running game. The defense is not that good. And so, not that I want to sit here and just rave about Patrick Mahomes, but the big takeaway that I have when reading this question and thinking about how this season has made me feel, it's that I think Mahomes is the best player in the NFL. Josh Allen is too. I wish it was reversed, but I can't build an argument with intellectual honesty that has Josh Allen ahead of Patrick Mahomes. Now, time will play out and we'll see what happens, but Mahomes is just, it doesn't matter what's going on around him. It feels like this guy can produce. So here's all the flowers for Patrick Mahomes. But I think the other piece of this is that those are the 3 best, right? Allen, Mahomes, and Burrow. It's going to be fun to watch them duke it out here, right? The 1 seed's on the line right now, and then there's going to be playoff games. There's going to be head-to-head matchups between these players. Right now, Burrow has a head-to-head over Mahomes this season. Allen has a head-to-head over Mahomes. And Allen, like, you can kind of, he's beat him 2 of the last 3, right? Pretty convincing. The 18-point win in 2021 in week 6. Of course, this year's win, and then the playoff game. I mean, Josh Allen's doing pretty well. So those are good players. I enjoy watching them all play, but obviously I hope Josh has the most success. Rick and the Roaming Buffalo asked me about the AFC playoff field and said, of the teams that are currently in a playoff spot, can you give us the ranking of teams that are the best to worst matchups for the Bills if they meet them in the playoffs? So I have the 6 other playoff teams right now, and this is the order in terms of who I want to play down to who I don't want to play. So number 1, the team I would want to play the most is the Ravens. I think they're just a high variance football team that has a lot of warts. I'd love to host the Ravens. Number 2 is the Dolphins. I think you bring those guys to Western New York and you feel good about your chances there. Tua, cold weather, has not really had any success. I mean, even this game that they just lost in Miami, it was like 45 degrees. I don't think he's won a game that the temperature was above 50 degrees. Obviously, a lot of familiarity there. Josh Allen plays well against the Dolphins. And so I think that quarterback matchup in Buffalo would be something that I'd lean into, although I don't think the Dolphins are the worst team on this list, but they're also a team that I think their coaching has gotten its own way quite a bit this year on both sides of the ball. So you feel good about your quarterback advantage, your home field advantage, and your coaching advantage against Miami. Number 3, the Jaguars. They're a team that I think is very much on the up and up here. Really good head coach in Doug Peterson. Trevor Lawrence is blossoming right before our eyes. They got a ton of talent on defense, young players. I know that could work against them, but I think that there's a lot of skill there. I think you can handle their offensive line and really affect their game plan, but they're kind of like one of those young, hungry teams that you feel like you can beat them, but there's just enough talent there that you get a little bit nervous. Number 4, the Chargers. Justin Herbert's awesome. So obviously bring him across the country and see what happens, but that quarterback's a good one. Number 5, the Bengals. Number 6, the Chiefs. So Ravens, Dolphins, Jaguars, Chargers, Bengals, Chiefs. The next one is from Bills WZA. It says, with our lack of consistent wide receiver production outside of Diggs, is it breaking your heart as much as mine to see Isaiah Hodgins doing well for the Giants? I'm happy for Isaiah Hodgins. I really am. He's gone over there and under some tough circumstances when you consider switching teams in the middle of the year. And I know that he has familiarity with Brian Daboll, but he's never taken a rep with Daniel Jones, the quarterback there. Has been able to settle in there and be productive for them. I think if you were to take the production that he's had in 7 games and average it out across 17, he's on pace for like 70 catches and 750 yards. So that's a good pace. That's a productive pace for a team that has a bad offensive line, that hasn't had a ton of production in the passing game. It doesn't really have a lot of receivers around him. For him to step in and provide some meaningful production has been great for Isaiah. And I think you can sit here and you could twist yourself up and say, well, yeah, the Bills would love to have that production. Well, they had the opportunity to have that production and they didn't do anything with it. And so I think for Isaiah, the best thing for him was getting somewhere that he would have more of an opportunity. And so you can be frustrated that the Bills didn't unlock that, but the opportunity just wasn't there. And so for Isaiah, go somewhere where you can be productive, and that's happened. If he was with the Bills, I don't know that anything would be different. You know what I mean? Like I don't think there was anything that was going to happen that was going to push him up the depth chart. So I'd rather see him do well and have opportunity than be the wide receiver 6 or 7 in Buffalo where he was. So I don't think the opportunity cost is he could just be doing that with the Bills. I don't think he was going to do that with the Bills because he wasn't going to have the opportunity. So that's where I'm at with it. But good for Isaiah. Next one comes from Brian, and Brian asked me for a report on my daughter's Christmas morning. And I would be happy to talk about our Christmas morning with our daughter, Rebecca Jean, who, if anyone is not familiar, she's 2 years old. She turns 3 next month in January. So she's an older 2-year-old. But in order, I think, to appreciate Christmas morning, I have to start a little bit sooner and kind of talk you through our Christmas season. I won't bore you here. I'll get through this pretty quick. But obviously, with a 2-year-old, we took Rebecca to see Santa several times, right? At our community, I live in Concord, North Carolina. So they had a Christmas tree lighting ceremony where she saw Santa. She had pancakes with Santa at her preschool. We went to that. She saw Santa when we went to the mountains to cut down the Christmas tree at the Christmas tree farm. She saw him at the Concord Mills Mall over here. And so she's seen Santa a lot, and I've seen her see Santa a lot. And every time that she saw Santa, she told Santa that she wanted LOL dolls for Christmas. Okay. And I don't know how familiar you are with LOL dolls, but they're these little dolls that come in a cube and you open it up and it's like 8 or 10 accessories and the doll. And you don't know exactly which one you're going to get, but they're pretty cool. Right. And so she loves to play with them. I don't know if it's trendy amongst the 2-year-olds, whatever's going on there, but she likes these LOL dolls. And she has several already, but what she told Santa she wanted was LOL dolls. And so when I say we, I mean my wife and I, we didn't buy her any LOL dolls for Christmas because we thought it would be a very easy gift for us to tell other people to get for her, right? Because you get, as a parent, there's uncles and aunts and my brothers and sisters and grandparents and stuff that are going to buy your kid gifts. And so they're going to ask you what she likes. And so we told everybody she likes LOL dolls. So we didn't buy her any because we figured she'd get a bunch. And so we got her other things, including a big LOL dollhouse, right? It's like 4 feet tall, 4 feet wide. It's this huge dollhouse. And so on the Friday before Christmas, I spent 4 hours that morning building this dollhouse. And to give you a little bit of insight on me as a person, I'm not very handy, right? You're not going to catch me with tools. I'm not great at assembling things. I'm not great at building things. I have other skills, but one of my skills is not being handy. I'm just not that guy, right? And so, this was a pretty big deal for me to sit down and build this dollhouse. It was like 300 screws, and I just had the right mindset. I had a great playlist. I think, in order to be successful at anything, you need to have the right mindset and a great playlist. I had both of those things. And I went into that Friday and I said, I'm going to get this done and I'm just going to take my time and get it right. And so I did. I was very proud of myself. I got this done. And so Saturday, remember, Christmas is on Sunday. Saturday, we have Christmas with my family before the Bills game. So family comes over and, my sister makes an amazing lasagna. We exchange gifts with the kids, and it never hit me, but nobody got her any LOL dolls. And we're giving my daughter, or Santa's going to give my daughter, the LOL dollhouse on Sunday morning. And we were going to have Christmas with more family members later on Sunday. But we weren't going to have any LOL dolls for her to play with this new dollhouse. And so at 5 o'clock, this hits me, right? So the Bills game's over around 4, helping my wife clean up. And we were just kind of chatting. And I was like, nobody got her any LOL dolls. It's like 5 o'clock. And we both looked at each other and like had an oh crap moment. And so I said, I gotta go find some LOL dolls. There's no way I could listen to my daughter tell 4 different Santa Clauses that she wants LOL dolls for her not to get one for Christmas, right? So I leave my house a little after 5 o'clock and I go to Target. And I'm walking all around Target and just hoping to find these LOL dolls. And I go to where they're supposed to be. They're wiped out. They don't have any. There's no LOL dolls in this Target. So I call my wife and I'm like, what do I do here? So she says, go maybe try Walmart, right? So it's 5:40 p.m. It's an 11-minute drive to Walmart and it closes at 6 o'clock. All right. So I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So it's pretty busy. It's Christmas Eve, a lot of traffic. I get there at 5:53 p.m. I pull into my parking spot and I get out of my car and I sprint to the door, right? And of course I go to the side of the doors that they're not open. And so I have to sprint down to the other set of doors, which you've seen at Walmart, they're huge. I sprint down to this other side and I get in. And the first words that I hear shortly after walking, into the Walmart was, the store's closing in 5 minutes. Please make your final selections. And I'm just praying that they have LOL dolls. And now keep in mind, I don't think I've been in a Walmart in maybe 10 or 15 years. So I don't really know where things are. I can't find the toys. I'm feeling stressed. So I finally find an employee and I ask him, I was like, hey, where are the toys? They point me in the right direction. I get over there and they are overflowing with LOL dolls. So you can imagine the relief that I had. So I grabbed 6 of them. I get to the counter and I got LOL dolls for my daughter on Christmas morning. So all that to say that we get to Christmas morning. It was absolutely incredible. My daughter woke up around 7:30. She came downstairs maybe 7:45. We took our time opening presents. She was so excited. She was so sweet. And she was fired up about her LOL dolls, and she was fired up about her LOL dollhouse and all the other stuff that we got her. So we had a good time. Like I said, we were patient. We just had a good time and opened the presents, and we had fun, the 3 of us. But I was relieved, very relieved. I had my jingle all the way moment. Maybe you guys have had a story like that, but that was my first. I don't do a lot of the shopping around here, so for me to get out there and pull that off, it was pretty stressful. But we got it done, and we had a great Christmas. And I'll tell you what, if you have kids, you know this, but there is nothing better than being a parent on Christmas morning. We had a lot of fun. So hopefully the same was true for you and yours. I shared a few pictures on my Instagram. So if you go to my handle is _Joe Marino, you can see some of those pictures from our Christmas over here at the Marino household. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. Tomorrow, we turn our attention to the Cincinnati Bengals, a big one coming up for the Buffalo Bills. We'll break it down tomorrow. And I know a lot about the Bengals. They're part of my pro scouting responsibilities for the Draft Network. So I'll have a lot to say about this football team that presents a big challenge for the Bills on Monday night. And obviously, we talked about the implications of the 1 seed. So we'll break them down tomorrow. Don't miss it. Make sure that you are subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.